Previously on Film School, we covered samurai, soldiers, Edison the Thief, and film noir. But today, we're examining a crucial step in how these words are magically transformed by tiny elves into this. Of course, by tiny elves, we mean the world's most talented artists, and by magic, we mean countless hours of work slaving over the compositional elements of each individual frame, analyzing scene development, and maintaining tension through a progression of images. Today on Film School, we're talking pre-visualization. The vision before the thing, the pre-thing vision. Welcome to Film School. Pre-visualization, or previs for short, sometimes also referred to as pre-rendering or animatics, is the process of planning and designing scenes before the production of a motion picture. Previs can refer to a number of different techniques like storyboarding with hand-drawn sketches, using 3D digital technology to create 3D storyboards, conceptualizing movie scenery and effects, or showcasing new digital techniques to convey ideas that will be turned into a final image later. It's called the movie business, so when studios are dealing with big budgets, most of the creative decisions need to be decided before shooting even begins. This way, filmmakers can organize and plan the production and communicate that plan to the crew. So before they shoot a single frame, they try to break it all down. Traditionally, these were done with storyboards. These 2D, often hand-drawn images can convey information about set design, camera angles, actor movement, and movement of the camera. So when you do roll camera, you waste less money trying to shoot Vin Diesel into space. Traditional hand-drawn storyboards can be traced to early experimental days of movie making. French magician and filmmaker Georges Méliès was known to have sketched all of his stories before rolling a single frame of film. This is evident in his elaborate set design and often complex trick cinematography, which puts his imitators to shame. But the real champions of the storyboarding process weren't directors, but animators, sometimes preferring storyboarding over writing a screenplay. While working with Walt Disney, animator Webb Smith drew scenes on separate sheets of paper and pinned them to a bulletin board to see the entire story in sequence. Walt recognized the value of this process in animation, and it soon became common practice. Walt Disney was story developer and story editor, and if he saw boards that took him out of the movie, new boards would need to be developed from scratch. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the first animated feature film to be fully storyboarded before being animated. But the amount of time to develop a Disney film was sometimes in the decades. There are early storyboards from the 1930s of Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, even though those movies didn't come out until the 1950s. Joe Grant pitched Lady and the Tramp to Walt in 1937. Storyboard development didn't take place until 1943, and the movie itself came out in 1955. That's 18 years for some romantic dog spaghetti next to a garbage can. I mean, those dogs would both be dead by then. With the systematized development of storyboarding, films were suddenly able to become much more interesting visually. Filmmakers began focusing on subjectivity of characters, and those characters would find themselves in increasingly more complicated and expensive situations. Hardly any other director is more associated with the use of storyboards than Alfred Hitchcock. Hitch, who started out as an art director, said that his primary reason for storyboarding was to have control over his pictures. Hitchcock liked to say his films were finished before they were even made. This was confirmed by the fact that he rarely looked through the viewfinder while on set, because it was merely the photographic equivalent of a storyboard that had already been designed earlier. So when Hitchcock hired Saul Bass to storyboard Psycho, he assumed that communicating his vision to an artist was part of the process. Well, this became complicated when Saul Bass, who was on set for the 7-day shoot of the shower scene, claimed it was he who directed that now iconic scene. Saul Bass created 48 storyboards for the scene, and if you watch the movie with the storyboards on hand, it's clear that someone was sticking very closely to them. But knowing Hitchcock, there's no doubt he followed Saul Bass's storyboard scrupulously for the 7-day shower scene shoot. 7 days to shoot? What were they Oh, okay, right, they were shooting a shower scene. And they're pervy old guys. Good job, Hitch. Occasionally, however, these storyboard drawings become famous unto themselves. Ridley Scott was a master draftsman and went to art school for illustration. His storyboards, lovingly referred to as Ridleygrams, have become famous for their expressive and otherworldly quality. During pre-production on Alien, Scott drew up a storyboard presentation for 20th Century Fox, who were so impressed with what Ridley proposed that they increased his budget from $4.5 million to $8.5 million. So what happens when a filmmaker has no talent as a draftsman but still wants to push the boundaries of visual storytelling? Oh, hey Steven Spielberg. What's up? Yeah, we're talking about you. Spielberg had efficiently and successfully used storyboards for his films, but on Raiders of the Lost Ark, Spielberg went one step further. He had some of the film's more elaborate set pieces shrunk down to scale miniatures so he could block shots before even arriving on set. This allowed him to shoot more quickly and stay on budget for the film's brisk 3-month shooting schedule. The miniatures worked so well that he did it again on Temple of Doom. For a filmmaker like Spielberg's buddy George Lucas, Previs helps answer questions, explore options, and aid in getting his point across to the hundreds, if not thousands, of people all down the production pipeline, offering more creative and financial control.
I used bits and pieces from documentary films about World War II and war footage of airplanes flying and that sort of thing.
Here they come!
Lucas had remarkable success working with legendary storyboard artists Joe Johnston, Alex Tavaleras, and Ralph McQuarrie, but the pre-visualization process needed to be pushed beyond hand-drawn storyboards. The making of the original 3 Star Wars films introduced low-cost innovations in previs to refine complex visual effects sequences. But what happens when you want to create an entire world that can't be photographed or built here on planet Earth? What do you do? The Phantom Menace began with a combination of the same video techniques employed on Return of the Jedi, but added new computer technology that was just becoming available. Lucas had small teams shooting the larger, complicated scenes, including the pod race and the space battle, and then filling out the sequences with what Lucas envisioned, with specific digital elements like spaceships, lasers, and lightsabers. Attack of the Clones utilized large green screen sets, so filmmakers wanted to have on-set pre-visualization as much as possible to better convey the immense sci-fi environments in the movie.
And you go into this door right here. That door, the red door.
Previs became an essential tool in the storytelling process by streamlining post-production, because no one enjoys looking at 20-minute cuts of green screen footage. So the Previs team collaborated with the post-production team and created rough composites that combined shot footage with the original previs in order to better represent what the finished film would look and feel like. By episode 3, the speed and power of computer technology had doubled, and the previs team could spend more time on character animation, shot design, proper cinematic techniques, and less time figuring out how the heck to bring George's crazy vision to life. Which is probably why the third prequel is almost good. In 2005, Steven Spielberg and Industrial Light and Magic were pushing the limits on previs for War of the Worlds. We sat down to talk with Daniel Gregoire, the CEO and pre-visualization director of Halon.
So during War of the Worlds, there's a scene in the film when Tom Cruise jumps into a blue van and with his family has to escape this exploding bridge. Now this scene was not in the script and was simply a brainchild of Steven's the day before he was going to shoot it. He walked us through what he wanted the shot to be. He wanted Tom to jump in the van, he wanted the van to drive along the street, take a right-hand turn, and then he wanted to tilt up to see this bridge cascading as it exploded and destroyed and tipped forward onto the housing project that was in front of it. So I quickly went and did a bunch of photography of the bridge, of the streets and the adjoining houses. And over the course of the night, even going back on the van to my hotel, working in my hotel in central New York in Manhattan, I proceeded to build the bridge, build the rest of the neighborhood, and build all the little pieces that I needed to complete this scene. The next morning when I came to set, I had my laptop flipped open, I had a version of the shot running on my laptop. The guys were waiting to shoot this shot, literally first shot of the morning. Steven looked at the previs, looked at me, said, "That's exactly what I want, that's perfect, let's shoot it." Cameras rolled, they did 2 takes and got it.
As Spielberg was shooting an action scene, he knew where the alien war machine would go when ILM rendered it months later, but he couldn't actually see the tripod crashing into cars and buildings during the shoot. This was a problem James Cameron would solve with his virtual camera and simulcam setup. Cameron wanted to tell a story on a fictitious alien planet with giant blue human-like aliens. He wanted it to be completely photorealistic, and he wanted to utilize as much performance capture as possible. In order to do this and do it well, he needed to see pre-visualization happening in real time. So Avatar's virtual production crew created real-time pre-visualization systems that allowed Cameron to direct performance-captured shots while viewing the on-the-fly composites of the final scene, like this trek across Pandora's floating mountains. The foundation of their virtual production system is Motion Builder, a 3D character animation program that's been used on everything from Rock Band to Beowulf. James Cameron and his team ended up with a highly evolved form of pre-visualization, a computer animation technique designed to show what a scene might look like with live action sequences and CGI together. These results changed everything, because while he was still shooting, Cameron was able to see a rough version of what the finished product would be. Pre-visualization and effects have evolved hand in hand, and as pre-visualization has gotten better, it's allowed our movies to get bigger. Every summer blockbuster this year will have used some form of previs to figure out its story before it ever even began filming. Maybe that's why we only get huge comic book movies this year. I don't know. Something for you to think about on the toilet. Alright, class dismissed.